Welcome everyone to another Parkinson's Life discussion. Today we're so fortunate to have the talented authors Kat Hill and Nancy Peate with us. More than 40% of the US population are affected by chronic diseases. Being well with chronic illness is a guidebook for every single one of those people suffering with chronic illness, looking to live full lives, characterized by joy, resilience, and wellness. What a beautiful way to put it. Please give a warm SmartXPD welcome to the authors of this wonderful book, Kat Hill and Nancy Peate. All right, I am going to mute everybody. I should have done that initially, but we'll get to it now.
Can you see that okay?
Oh, yeah.
So hi everybody, I'm Kat. Thanks so much for coming out today. It's fun to talk to you all. I am currently transmitting from the back of my truck in Palm Springs area. I am traveling across the country with my husband in an Airstream travel trailer, and our internet connection is not great where we're currently parked. So I have driven up to a spot so that I can do this using my phone as a hotspot. So if you'll bear with me with my background here a bit. And then Nance, I'll let you introduce where you're coming from, and I'll just kind of start playing this part.
Okay, sounds great. So my name's Nancy Peate. I'm in Portland, Oregon, and I'm a retired librarian. And I've had Parkinson's since 2014, about 8 years. And Kat and I met each other in a support group like this one, so we can talk about that.
Yeah. So we're here to tell you about the book that we worked on together and a little bit about the history of the book, how it came into being, and how it might be useful for you. So we'll both tell you a little bit about our backgrounds and our Parkinson's story, but we want to kind of honor that the beginning of a new year is sometimes a really great time to think about shifting our focus a little bit, and we hope that you will be open to our ideas of how to bring wellness kind of into your everyday life, no matter what the challenges are. You know, Nance and I have yet to meet a single human being that haven't had a rough day somewhere along the line, whether they have a chronic illness or not. So we hope that the messages will be pretty universal, even though Nancy and I come to this journey with a Parkinson's story. So,
oh, I love these pictures. My favorite part is that notice Kat's painted polka dots on her boxing gloves, which is a really terrific way to show how tough you are. Polka dots make things better. This is us in our exercise class, and we definitely have done a lot of exercise as part of our Parkinson's prescription. Like I said, I'm Nancy. I was a reference librarian, and before that a children's librarian. I'm a mother. I have a 22-year-old son, a wife, and I'm here in Portland. I have boxing gloves.
yeah. And she throws a mean punch to the bag.
Known to, yeah.
I'm Kat Hill, and I am, prior to Parkinson's, I was the director of a busy inner city hospital-based midwifery service, delivering babies and providing prenatal care for women in the Portland area. I also practiced several years in a private practice group in the Eugene Springfield area, also in Oregon. I was busy raising teenagers at the time of my diagnosis and caring for my mom, who was struggling with her third round of cancer. So it was a busy time in my life when I was diagnosed at the age of 48. And I pivoted fairly quickly out of a stressful work environment to be able to shift and so that I could focus on health and wellness. And like Nancy likes to say, that's, you know, exercise has been a real integral part of our journey. I'm sure it's part of yours as well. And we were going to 6:30 a.m. boxing classes 3 to 4 days a week. And we were pretty committed to that. And the book springboarded a bit out of that. I'm going to let Nancy tell the story, though, of how we met, which is fun.
Yeah, we both were newly diagnosed. We didn't know each other before our diagnosis. And I know for me, one day I decided to go to a support group and I didn't call ahead. I didn't make any contacts. I just showed up. It was a very dark room and kind of a dreary day. And there was nobody else in the room except Kat. And she had done the very same thing that I had. She had come to the support group. So both of us were there. It was clear that it was not meeting. And we found out later they had a picnic that day, but we didn't know that. So kind of in that darkened room, we decided to stay and share our stories. And as we talked, we realized we had a lot in common. We both had still raising teenagers. We both were working full time, and we both were really searching for community.
We had both tried some groups before that had been great people that we had met, but not really a group that seemed to meet our needs. So it was really one of those propitious moments that we both ended up in that dark conference room. And what launched was this whole process of focusing on wellness. This is a fun picture. We don't dress like this often, but
we've gotten better with makeup.
We very early in our journey, the World Parkinson Congress came to Portland. So it was in our backyard. And we had an opportunity with our boxing group. There was a dance troupe that formed secondary to that boxing group. And we were able to perform with a group to Michael Jackson's Thriller at the opening ceremonies. And so this is Nancy and I looking like people who have risen from the dead.
We were ghouls. And I think we kind of frightened people as we walked into the hall because they weren't really prepared for why are they white and so made up. And we had a very good time.
We had a great time, you know, and exercise and fun and positivity and having things to look forward to are a real integral part of how we maintain our wellness. It's a very intentional process, and the World Parkinson Congress has been a real integral part for us of building community. I like to say that I went that first time looking for answers, and what I found were my people. And Nancy and I talked at that Congress as we were meeting other people and learning more about the disease, that we really hoped in the coming years to be able to maybe present something and take some new ideas to the Congress in Kyoto, Japan in 2019. If none of you have ever been or had the opportunity to attend the World Parkinson Congress, it really can be very life-changing. Nance has a good story about that, seeing some of the art exhibits.
Yeah, down one of the halls, there was a photography exhibit, and it was just photographs of people with Parkinson's. And I was pretty newly diagnosed, and I didn't actually know very many people that had Parkinson's, but I walked down that hallway and these beautiful photographs, portraits, and they all look like people I'd like to know. They were, you know, just they were looking like really interesting, great people. And I felt like this is going to be okay with all of these people that are experiencing the same thing I was.
At all ages and stages and genders and colors and backgrounds. So it became a unifying moment for us to want to work towards taking our experience to Kyoto, Japan. The pictures that you see are, we were very lucky to submit a talk and be accepted to speak in Kyoto. And we spoke in the Living with Parkinson's pre-Congress session to a group of several hundred attendees about being well beyond a diagnosis and about the process and science behind being resilient. And we were very lucky. We had many folks that traveled with us and joined us at that talk. And that talk became the springboard for the book.
Right. This is us up on the stage. I think it was right before we started, and we were pretty nervous, but we had the people who were in the front row taking us on or supporting us. And it went fine. I think we had one technical glitch where feedback loop started going again, or there was something that moved on ahead.
Yeah, it's always the technical stuff, right? That's the most stressful.
Yeah.
If you read the book already, you might notice some of the folks in the picture on the left. Some of those people are featured in our book. All of those folks have young onset Parkinson's, and they all were there in Kyoto with us. They're also all from the Portland area. So that was a real boost. We decided actually at the conference in Japan that it was a well-received talk, and Nancy and I both really enjoyed working together. We had done many test presentations in our living room. We enticed people with promise of wine and cheese and crackers if they would come hear our talk. And we felt like there was more area that we wanted to delve into. We wanted to really look at the literature and see if there were some nuggets that we could share with our community that might help them live and be well. We also at this point were actively facilitating a young onset support group that met in a local pub. We focused on normalcy and travel and hobbies and wellness topics. Certainly we talked at times about medication and Parkinson's specific topics, but we tried very much to focus on how to bring wellness into one's everyday life. And we got to learn about how lots of people were doing that, even in the tough times. Neither Nancy nor I are here to tell you that toxic positivity is the way to go, to just ignore all the hard stuff and just buck up and smile. But we do want to talk about sort of the nuts and bolts about the formula that we have found to helping with wellness.
Like Kat said, it began with our talk in Kyoto, and we decided we just were going to work on the things that really spoke to us. We started doing a lot of research, and we rode the tram up to the health sciences library and researched, and just went with like, what is really compelling? And I had a lot of people ask, like, how was it co-writing a book? And honestly, I can say it was great. We had
people are very curious about how you do it together. And it helped that Nancy knew how to use Google Documents. I did not. And it helped that we were telling ourselves every step of the way that we were learning new skills and growing our brain.
We had already committed to our exercise class. I mean, we were really committed to it. So to add a writing session at the end of the class, we would just finish our exercise and then walk over to the coffee shop. I didn't mention that that was where we wrote, but we always would go get coffee and write. So the commitment exercise led over into other things that we committed to.
And as COVID hit, like all of us, we all had to learn to pivot to a more online form, and we did Zoom calls and telephone calls and a shared document. What was such a gift is that having a commitment to each other, probably like you guys in your group, you have a commitment to show up and you're missed if you're not there. That's part of our wellness regimen is having our people. And we had a great group of people in our boxing group that were also cheering us on during this process, some of whom were involved in the talk in Kyoto, and then others that we met along the way, including a dear friend of ours, Eve, who was an editor at a major publishing house in her, what I call Act One, or and she really cheered us on. And we didn't know she was an editor when she started the process.
At some point she came up to us and she's just said, I so believe in you guys. This just has to happen. You have to write what you're writing. I want to be on it. I want to be part of the project. And then that's when we found out she had been a managing editor at a pretty large publishing house. So yes.
Yeah, we had never tried anything like this independently. So she helped guide our process. She felt like it was a publishable document. And so we worked on it, and we used our network in Oregon. There's an organization called Parkinson's Resources of Oregon, and they were very helpful. They were kind of the umbrella agency that helped us with our support group, and other agencies like the Davis Phinney Foundation, the World Parkinson Coalition, kind of helped us to learn more about Parkinson's disease and what did people want to know about Parkinson's. We didn't use an agent. Some people will use an agent. They'll pay somebody to go market their book for them. We just got online and put our nose to the grindstone, and it felt like applying for college, huh, Nance?
It did. It was surprising how much work it was to do a single query we tried to find agents, but there wasn't a good match for us. And we just kept preparing more submissions, and each one you have to do is like a college application. There's quite a bit of work to put into. So if we were able to get out 1 or 2 submissions every 10 days, a week or 10 days, we were doing really well.
Yeah.
And we
sent it to about, what, 15, Nancy, we think,
sounds right.
publishers?
And we got about 15 refusals back.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's about the same number.
Yeah. And then Hatherley Press.
Yeah,
Yay.
and then Hatherley Press said, we think we might be a match for you.
Yeah, they liked our wellness spiral. Oh, there we go. I'm gonna go.
The
And
book.
yeah, that and it took a while. It with supply chain from the time we submitted until we got a book was about a 15-month process, Nancy. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
16 months, longer than it takes to grow a baby. It took to grow the book. So, but then it came, and that's what it looks like. And that's the first day Nancy and I saw our book. So what's in the book? Part of you are probably wondering, okay, enough already. We get to the guts. So I'm going to show, this is a black and white picture. Basically, we talk about a model for wellness that we call the wellness spiral. And I can show it to you in color. That's on the back of the book, and it's on your slide in black and white. And it's a process that's a fluid process that you move up and down. It's not like you are at this stage and then you graduate forever to this stage and so on. And the stages are, the bottom of this spiral is down the rabbit hole. And then we believe that when you're at a crossroads in your life, you're at a point where you decide whether you want to stay in that rabbit hole mindset, which is kind of a yucky place to be. We all know that place. Or are there some ways for us to get up to this wellness part at the top, the good stuff at the top? And we believe you can build on compassion for both yourself and for others. You build on your community. If you don't have a community, you need to find and build a community. And the book talks about some concrete ways to do that. And the purple section is about joy. And I really wanted to call the book something about joy, and Nancy wasn't sure.
Yeah, I took my feet on the word joy. I kept saying, I don't think we can use the word joy. It's just too much. And then we looked it up, and I still was pretty hesitant, like, do we deserve joy?
And don't we all deserve joy? We all deserve joy.
Once I read what it meant, light and good things in your life, happiness. And then I thought, well, okay, I'm going to go for it too. And that really opened a door for me of not being afraid that I'm not saying there's joy all the time, but there are moments. We have a list in the book of things that bring you joy. And one of them is like eating an ice cream cone. There's 100 things that bring joy.
Right. And you all know those, you're not gonna, we don't propose that we have all the answers and suddenly you're gonna go from being in the rabbit hole to joyous by what we bring in the book. What we call on you to do is think about some of those things and be intentional about how you incorporate them into your lives. And we use the spiral model because it's not linear. It's not a straight process. You don't go from 0 to 100 miles an hour. And accomplish joy.
Yeah.
It's messy, it's complicated, it's up and down, it's and we believe that that's reflective of how life works. And the feedback we've gotten about the book is that we give you bite-sized pieces that are tangible to bite off in short periods of time. We try not to overwhelm you with 1,000 suggestions and 1,700 studies that will tell you how to do it. And during the pandemic, Nancy and I had a real chance to kind of try out this model, both with ourselves and with our immediate families, because it was a challenging time for all of us. So
I think Pat saw the importance of it before I did it. It took me a little while, like, how does this work? Because I really want this to apply to my life. I don't want just steps that don't make sense. And I kept looking at it. And then at some point I thought, hey, this is really workable. This really helps me. On the days that I'm having a hard time, I can look at this and think, what's going on and where could I apply my interests to help get me out of a rabbit hole?
mhm.
It's not rocket science, but it's hard to remember.
And I'm sure all of you are learning about, and probably even in this class specifically, about the idea that our brains are they're no longer fixed. They're plastic, they're mobile. The term neuroplasticity is the process that when we learn new things, we are constantly laying down new pathways in our brains. And I find this fascinating. And so whether we're one or whether we're 101, we have the ability to lay those pathways down. And it can be something as simple as, when I'm feeling down, I try to think of 3 things I'm grateful for. 3 things. It's a simple thing. I'm having a crummy day. 3 things. And Nancy knows, she's heard me say this a million times. I'm always grateful Wednesday mornings, because Wednesday mornings, the garbage gets picked up. And I have lived places that the garbage isn't picked up. So I am grateful every time that garbage truck comes by and picks up my garbage. And some days it may be as simple as, I'm really glad that my pencil didn't break in the middle of that meeting because I'm writing notes. Other days it may be more expansive. I'm grateful for the ability to make a nice meal for my family, or I'm grateful that I have, prescription medicine coverage in my Medicare plan. I think that no matter what our circumstances, we can change the way our brain feels about them by what we focus on. And the literature says, gosh, if we're busy focusing on finding 3 things in a day we can be grateful for, we're not necessarily focusing on the 2 or 3 things that are troubling us the most. Maybe it's our tremor, maybe it's that we're slowing down, maybe that we have pain. And it's not that these things magically go away. We just are shifting the focus. So that's part of what we discuss in the book.
And I want to brag on Kat. She did the spiral. She painted that with watercolors. So we enjoyed it. It's so colorful and, like we said, messy, and all the good stuff's at the top.
Yeah. And it was loosely inspired by something that we had seen at the World Parkinson Congress in Japan. Actually, the advocacy pyramid was presented by Dr. Sonia Mather, and she and Tom Isaacs had sort of developed this advocacy pyramid. And there are some similarities. For us, the spiral worked as it related to health and not necessarily advocacy work.
Yeah.
However, I will say an integral part of being well, we believe, is being of service, investing in others, and looking outside of yourself. And so doing the work that we do, the volunteer work that we do, writing the book was a great project for us to look outside ourselves. So.
This is somebody sent us a picture they took at Barnes and Noble. It was a pretty cool day for me.
Yeah.
Here's our book.
So we wrote the book. It's published through Hatherley Press. It's focused for anybody that has a chronic illness or knows somebody and loves somebody with a chronic illness. We think the tools are very well suited for those that are newly diagnosed. But also, we have heard from others that at certain points in their disease process, when they're needing to kind of shift or kind of regroup, that it can be a useful tool also. you can get it anywhere that Penguin Random House books are distributed. So you can get it, of course, on Amazon, but Barnes and Noble is the bookstore that's stocking hard copies. And we're hoping to be giving some book talks in Barcelona, Spain, which is where the World Parkinson Congress is again. It is meeting this year, July 4th to the 7th in Barcelona, Spain. It was delayed a year. So it's pretty exciting to be going.
A trip for people that like heat.
Yeah.
You want to be somewhere warm in this summer. That's Barcelona.
Yeah.
It's going to be an exciting time.
Yeah, it should be really fun. Well, that's what we've got about kind of an overview of the book. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we want to take any questions, and nothing's off limits here. So fire away, unmute yourself, or
yeah, this was really inspiring and great. I do have just a quick question about now how someone would use the book. Would you intend to have them read the book, or is it a companion piece when times are tough, they refer to the book? I mean, obviously they read the book, but is it something you read and then you practice, or is it something you keep and you refer to as things change for you?
So I think that the answer is we've heard it being used in all of those different circumstances, Patrick. We've been hearing about many support groups that are now using it as a tool in their support groups. So they're taking a chapter at a time and reading the chapter and then discussing the chapter and how things that they might do. And we feel really honored that it's being used that way. I also think it's something that could be read and then referred back to as well. We offer in each chapter some points to consider or reflect on, and not like assignments, like, okay, now go answer, questions 1 through 8, but things that you might be thinking about or jotting notes down about finding your own wellness. We really believe that you all have the tools that you need to do this. It just may be our book may help you organize them in a way to keep them accessible when you're struggling.
Yeah. I've heard from a few people that they keep it on their nightstand and read a couple pages every few days. Keep ideas of wellness fresh in their minds.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the other thing before I forget to say this, I want to just express how inspiring it is to see two people with a diagnosis that's tough come together and, be constructive with that. It's not all that common. And I think you guys are you probably just went to work and didn't realize, maybe you had your head down you didn't realize the rarity of what you were doing. And I tell this group here all the time, they're not common. All of you people here, there are so many people that are not becoming proactive and not doing the work and are having a tough time with it and not realizing, and we tend to forget that because we come together a couple times a week, and I like to remind my group here that that the choices they're making to do this type of work are difficult, and it's not all that common. And what you both, Nancy and Kat, have done, I think, is really inspiring. And I know you wrote it not just about Parkinson's, but obviously, yeah, I'm sure the questions with that diagnosis that you had to ask of yourself led you, maybe formed a guiding light for you. And so I love go ahead. Well, I was going to say, I love the spiral idea. I was wondering, maybe, everybody on here has been diagnosed with Parkinson's. I believe I do have some people that don't have Parkinson's. The diagnosis is initially, of course, very difficult. And then afterwards, there can be other stuff that changes that becomes crisis moment. right? That might be Parkinson's related, might not be. I guess my question is, with someone in a moment of crisis, where do they go on that spiral? Like, how do they use that?
Yeah. So when you're down in the rabbit hole reflects where we all get to on hard days, where it's hard to think of anything but disease, progression, symptoms, you feel despair, you feel grief. And grief is a really integral part of joy, right? We have to get through the grief part. So if you're down in the rabbit hole, there are tools that we talk about. How can you get up to compassion? What are some tools that you can use? We talk about mindfulness. We talk about the data that talks about just showing up, calling a friend, using resources. How do you build a community if you don't feel like you have a community? So there's not an ABC or 1, 2, 3 in each chapter. Do this and we guarantee you'll be at wellness, in 5 short weeks. That's not our pitch. Yeah. But it says these are some very simple tools that you can activate if you're feeling lost, and also to validate that we all feel lost at sometimes. In the book, I share a story. My son, at the age of 7, was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and very early on started to manage his own care. And I realized that at my age, I couldn't very well stay on my couch for week after week, when I had told him, we've got to focus on what you can do. You can be Sawyer, the type 1 diabetic kid who gives himself shots, or you can be Sawyer, the soccer player, or the kid with a quirky sense of humor that likes to do stand-up or whatever. And I think that for me, it gave me the words very early on to help me shift my mind. Once I could get off the couch and accept that my life was going to be different now, I wasn't going to work anymore and deliver babies. But there were things I still could do. And I think all of us here in this room have probably had to pivot from life before diagnosis, but there are things we still can do. And if I could write a book after being a clinician for decades, my goodness, anybody can do it.
My favorite step out of the rabbit hole is compassion, and I think that's where I always go. You can either use it to express to other people, maybe it's a volunteering or helping somebody else, knocking on somebody's door down the street, or self-compassion, which could include taking care of your nutrition, or working out, or getting a good night's sleep. So compassion is this huge word, but that's my go-to always when times are rough. I think it's time for compassion.
So it's a complicated answer to a very simple question. I realize. I wish it were just an on-off switch, right?
That'd be great.
I saw a hand.
Yeah, Douglas. Go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Kat. It was wonderful. You mentioned importance of service alongside compassion. I mean, that's, to me, has been so important. Other people other than yourself to worry about. The other thing I really liked was this concept of toxic positivity. When does positivity become toxic?
So that's a really, really good question. I think that some people talk about positivity like it is a switch, and that no matter what we're feeling, that we should automatically put on a bright face and smile and be happy. I certainly believe that I was born with sort of a positive attitude. I think that some people tend towards that, but I also think that authentic positivity, meaning you do the work, you acknowledge that there are hard days, and you acknowledge grief in this process. I'm not going to tell you that I love Parkinson's. I'm not going to tell you that I recommend everybody join our club. but I will tell you, I've learned a lot more moving through that grief into acceptance about having a chronic illness and accepting that there are things that I need to let go of. I have a richer existence for that, but I don't think we should just, I should come out here and tell you everything will be just fine if you read our book and you'll be positive and happy and well if you do everything we say to do. That's more of a toxic environment, not acknowledging the rabbit holes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
And I
Thank
don't
you.
want to tell you that you're not going to have another bad day ever, right?
Go on. Tell me.
It was
I
interesting writing,
wish.
it was interesting writing this book with Kat and realizing how very different we were. Our Parkinson's manifestations are different and our personalities are different. And there were days when I could be positive, and days when I couldn't be. And so I think the word authenticity really does ring true for me. Of each one of us has our own way of expressing how positive we're feeling at the moment and or not feeling.
Hmm.
We also talk a lot in the book about the importance of words and the words that we tell others, but more importantly, maybe are the words we tell ourselves. Okay. How many of you have said, or somebody's asked you, are you having a good day? Or are you having, I'm sorry, or having a bad day, right? And I don't define my good days and my bad days based on how my Parkinson's is. I can have a really great day with lots of symptoms. My tremor may be going full bore. I may be having an off time, but I can still have a day that I consider good. And conversely, I can have a kind of rotten day and have Parkinson's symptoms that maybe weren't so tough for me that day. So I think being careful how we define things helps us to better understand them, what's happening in our lives, and also to express it. So I don't like the term like when I got ill. I've heard people refer to their diagnosis as when I got sick. And I don't consider myself sick. I consider myself a healthy woman in her 50s that happens to have Parkinson's, right? You know, I'm out there and that changes subtly. How I think about it, how I use the words to myself, wow, that's really pretty powerful, even more than what we tell other people.
Hmm.
So,
You know, one of the other things that occurs to me, and I don't want to take time from anybody that has a question. If you have a question, by the way, just wave your hand. I'll see you, and we'll come to you next. But the whole, one thing that I wanted to acknowledge a little bit and maybe get your take on the fact that you guys met in a support group. There's a certain amount of irony, I think, to that. Maybe irony is not the right word, but you know, the support groups, they're not right for everybody, right? You know, I mean, some people go and it scares them and they don't want to go back. Some people live outside of the community, don't want to be in the community, and that's absolutely right choice for them. But I just found it worthy of note that you, I guess, were both recently diagnosed and you chose a support group, and this is what came out of it, which I think is really
and I hadn't even been formally diagnosed yet. I was going through the diagnosis process, and